we came from Mexico. We didn't know where to live, so we stayed at my aunt's house. And everything was fine. And my mom says that it was all good at first. She said that I was just fucking being weird. I was just being like, oh, I'm gonna hang out with my friend. And she'd be like, what friend? And then it was my imaginary friend. And then I started acting out of place. And I was starting to rebel and do things that I wasn't supposed to do. And I'd be like, oh, my friend made me do them. And my mom started kind of getting worried because she's like, this friend is scary. So she started praying for me, and every day she would pray for me and pray for me every night. And I would literally just be in this little room in the corner, like with my imaginary friend. And my mom said she prayed until finally one night she saw, like in the distance of her dream, like somebody crying. And she said she walked up to that person crying, and when that person turned around, it was like a very scary face that came up to her and started, like, you know, getting right at her face. And my mom just said that she started praying in her dream, and she started praying and praying, and the person's face wouldn't like move away from her. And then finally she woke up, and ever since then I never had an imaginary friend again. And she told me again the story, and I was like, I literally don't remember who this person is. I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, you literally had like an imaginary friend for a whole year and you don't know who it is? And I was like, yeah, like literally I don't know who this person is. I don't know who you're talking about. And that was one of my other paranormal like experiences. Basically, I was seeing dead people at 5. That's how chill I am.
I went to a friend's birthday party, and well, it was supposed to be a sleepover, but we didn't do anything. They told me if I wanted to meet a girl named Alice, and I was like, I was under the impression it was like one of her friends. I was like, yeah, sure. So they took me into the kitchen, and that's when they were calling out to Alice, and then I thought it was a dog or a pet or some shit, but it wasn't. One of the drawers just decided to open without any warning, no nothing. They didn't pull it or anything. And I visibly got startled, and I like stood back and I was like, what the fuck? So I tried leaving, and they were like, no, hold on, we're gonna ask you some questions. So I was like, okay. But I pulled out my phone, and I started recording. And they would ask it a series of questions. If it would open, I'm pretty sure it would mean yes. If they didn't, it would mean no. All I remember is that the ghost didn't mind that I was there. You know, from me remembering it, and finally, I remember when they asked it if it could speak. They were to like maybe in front of me, and there was an open door on the left with nobody inside of it, and I vividly remember them saying yes, like a voice, not theirs. They didn't have a raspy voice. It was yes, and at the end of the video, you could see me fucking running like hell because I'm fucking terrified because I've never been put in a scenario like that. Everyone always assumes that it's like strings are being pulled, but I was like 12. I didn't know anything about video editing. That's what I saw on my shitty Samsung J3 emerge, and it was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me.
There? Oh my god. Thank you. Could you ask it something, please?
Open the door 2 times if you die here.
Okay, that's 1. I guess she didn't.
Okay.
Oh, nope. She did. That is crazy.
Open the drawer if you don't mind in here.
Oh, thank you.
Open the drawer 2 times if you like us being here?
Hmm.
Oh?
I assume, yeah, I guess not.
Are you nice? Open it once if you are.
She's not. I guess not. Alright. Tell her it was nice meeting her, I guess.
Wait, can you talk?
Dude, if I just hear a yes from there, I'm booking.
Wait.
No, 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 no.
Whenever I was younger, I was probably like 9 or 10. This was during the peak of my internet addiction, and I was looking up weird YouTube videos, like ghost videos. I would watch a lot of ghost hunting shows, and I would try to mimic them. I was random. I just liked a lot of weird stuff like that, like cryptids, and I would just scare myself. Because in the beginning, I've had experiences in the past before this whole thing, these whole row of events happening. I just they didn't really scare me as much because I just didn't understand the whole concept of ghosts. And the way horror movies portray paranormal things is just always very scary, especially to the mind of a child. A child's always going to fear things that are scary, so they were scary to me. It's much different from how I am now, because now when I experience more paranormal things, I usually am not as scared, and even if something's like, I guess, a negative energy is trying to like threaten my peace, I'm not really scared either, because I don't let it get to me. And normally a lot of spirits are practically harmless, and they just kind of want to interact with you. Anyways, so during this time in my childhood, we would move a lot, and we never really stayed in a home for very long. So this was probably the home that we stayed the longest at, and me and my sister didn't live in this home like permanently. It was mainly my parents' home that we would visit during holidays and weekends and vacations, summer of the sort. Because we would mainly stay in Houston with my brother and stepdad for the majority of our lives during school, and we would go back and forth a lot. Anyways, at this location that we stayed at, I experienced a lot of things. And it wasn't just me that experienced stuff in the house. Everyone that lived in the house has a story. And so I'll kind of start off with mine. This is very important. There was a cemetery across the street from our house, which we didn't really think anything of because the cemetery was fairly modern. It was probably developed in like the 60s maybe. Not too old, very upkept, just your typical cemetery. A particular thing that I remember was that there was a bayou in the cemetery, and it was on a big hill. So the further you go, if you're at the edge of the bayou in the cemetery and you're speaking or you're playing music, you'll hear that music all the way to our house. Like, you'll hear it much closer than what it really is. Little stuff like that I would pay attention to because I was just always trying to figure out ways to explain things that happened to me, that I've experienced, because I just really couldn't believe that I experienced these things, and I wanted to explain them in ways that made sense. recording on my mom's like little flip phone, and I would do a lot of videos.
Okay, this is video number 2. I'm gonna wait till it snows.
So I remember leaving the little phone camera in front of a UV lamp. So I leave it there and I go and do some other shit, and then I wait a little bit, and then I come back, I end the video, I start recording, and then I rewatch the entire video, and I notice something really weird. So there's the front door and the room of the front door, and then beside it, just a little wall space apart, is the restroom. So I saw like your typical orb, your typical ball of light. It was see-through, but it was just a perfect shape, a perfect circle. Like, you notice all the dust particles, but then you see this perfect circle come out of that room, out of the front door room, and go directly into the restroom. And the restroom had a sliding door, so it was cracked a little bit open, and I saw the light go into the restroom and just disappear in there, and it didn't cut through the other side, like the dust particles, because the dust particles, they were moving just fine. They were moving while that orb was still moving, and disappeared into the restroom. And I thought that was really weird. I thought that was really crazy, because it did look very different from everything else. And I don't know, I didn't think much of it. I just thought it was really cool. I thought it was something. This house was just really small, and there was like 4 people living in it most of the time. And in a small house, a lot of things can happen, just a lot of tension. And during that time, it was just a lot of people were growing, and me and my sister were growing up, and we were just different people back then, and my parents were very much different people back then. They've changed a lot, but it was just a rough time in our lives, and we went through a lot. And I think the things that happen are explainable in a way where I think we attracted those things to happen. We attracted a lot of that negativity. I think just everything, all the tension that was going on during that time, I think we attracted all of that, because I don't think that house was really haunted. My second story is a lot more traumatic for me. So the layout of the house, I slept on the sofa, and my sister slept on the other sofa in the living room. My sofa was on this side, and her sofa was this side, so there was a little gap in between, and then the TV in the front. And then behind was the kitchen. So anyways, I was asleep here, and there's one window, a big window on my side, and 2 windows in front of the TV and us. The outside, there was a shack that my dad had built, and it was covering up half of the first window up there, and then there was a bunch of cactuses next to the window next to my sofa. So I was asleep one night. I was trying to sleep anyways, and then I started to hear whispering, and it did scare me a little bit. So I started to cover myself with my blanket and put the blanket over my head, because I just don't like the way whispering sounds, and it sounded a little freaky to me. So I put my covers over my head, and then I kept hearing it, and it kept getting intense. Like, there was voices over each other, and I kept hearing that over and over. It's like one of those movies where the whispering gets louder and louder, and it was just so close. It was around me. It was really fucking terrifying. I remember sweating a lot. I remember just crying over and over, just tearing up, but I was quiet because I didn't want, I just wanted to disappear in that very moment. I wanted to be somewhere else. I just remember being very fucking scared and just trying to hide, and I don't think it was anything else. I do remember the next morning I asked my dad, because my cousins lived right next door. They lived there, and they were very close. So I asked if he could ask if anyone was by the window. He said that maybe someone was talking on the phone by the window or something. but honestly, they would have to be like very fucking close. And it was multiple whispers, like it wasn't just one voice. The whispers didn't really have a particular like language. It was so weird, but maybe it's because there was just so much over layered with each other that I just heard 100 different things all at once. And so none of it really made sense. I couldn't hear anything clear, and I was also scared too, so I wasn't really paying attention to what was being said, and that freaked me out the most, I think. Another story of mine, same house of course. I was home alone, and my mom and sister went to go buy some groceries. They weren't too far away, they were like maybe 15 minutes away from the house. And you know, I think it was my first time being alone. I'm not sure, I don't quite remember. I remember we didn't have any animals at the time because we used to have a cat and a dog, but they came later on. Anyways, so I was by myself. I was watching Ghost Adventures, I think it might have been Ghost Hunters, the Sci-Fi Channel. I was watching that, and I freaked myself out a little bit, because I was like, oh my god, what if this house is haunted? Because at that point, I've already heard other stories, my parents and my sister's stories. So, you know, I was like, man, this house is fucking haunted. Like, I'm alone. I'm probably gonna hear some shit. Like, I've already heard a bunch of shit. Like, what's stopping it from doing it in the daylight? So it was daytime, and I was laying on my sister's couch sideways watching TV. I was watching Ghost Hunters, but you know, I was just paranoid. So I was like, oh, let me watch something else. Let me take my mind off of this weird shit. So at that moment, I started hearing dragging sounds. And these dragging sounds this didn't traumatize me as much, but it was still scary. Okay, but I did my best to because I wanted to turn around. I wanted to look over the sofa and look behind me and see what was happening, because I was like, what is that noise? It sounds like it is right behind me. And so I could just hear dragging sounds, what sounded like a dragging bag, or someone dragging themselves, or someone dragging someone. And I could just hear that all across the floor, through the kitchen, behind the sofa, just through the kitchen, like constantly, like a constant repeated sound, like it was just dragging, someone dragging something. And that was pretty freaky, honestly. It didn't freak me out as much as the whispers, but it did scare me, because at this point I was kind of just getting used to it. I was just trying to fight fear and just not show that I was scared, just so I could be stronger. It was hard for me back then though, because like I was a very fragile child, and I had a fragile mind, and everything was terrifying. So I stayed in that entire spot, and I waited for them to come back home. And then when they came back home, you know, I told them what I was hearing. Like, I kept hearing noises, I kept hearing dragging sounds, and nothing could explain that. There was no one outside or anything, and that sound came from inside the house and nowhere else. So, yeah. I have another story of seeing something. This one I'm not really sure I can say it's paranormal, but I think it is. So I was asleep on my sofa. My sister was asleep on the other sofa. I woke up randomly, and I saw my mom, or what I thought was my mom, come out from her bedroom. And I didn't hear the bed squeak, because usually the bed squeaks a little bit. But she walked out of the bedroom hallway, and she just stood there. And it looked exactly like my mom. I couldn't really make out facial features because it was pretty dark in the room. Not a lot of light came in through the house when it was nighttime. But I could see her silhouette in the hallway, and I could see her, like, the outline of her cheekbones, because she has very, like, defined cheekbones. And, like, kind of like eyes, like, her eyes were just really dark. I remember that her eyes were really dark. It was like her looking at me, but just looking through me, which was really fucking weird. But as a child, I didn't really comprehend that what I was seeing, if it was her or not. Like, in my mind, I was just unsure. Like, it's so weird, but I have never been unsure, but also just like, I'm gonna act composed because I don't know what I'm seeing. So, like, for me, I'm seeing my mom. That's what I think. I'm seeing her, and she's just standing here, being weird. She's just looking at me, staring at me. Maybe she wants me to go to sleep. I don't know. So she's like standing there for a good like 2 or 3 minutes, like just standing there in the middle of the hallway looking at me. And I call out to her. I'm like, Mom. Like I say it really loud. I'm like, Mom, Mom. Like I called her like at least 3 times, and I got no answer. And instead of her going to the restroom, which I thought she was going to do, she turns around and walks back in the room. And I don't hear the bed squeak either. So I'm just like, that's weird. And then I go to sleep. And that was that. Then I woke up the next morning and I asked her, I was like, did you get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom? I just told her, did you get up in the middle of the night and just like stand there? Like, why were you looking at me? Like, did you want to, like, I was just like asking her, like, what do you want? Like, what were you doing? And she's like, I didn't get up. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't get up at all. That's all I remember really about that time. It's a very confusing memory because I'm just not sure it happened. I know it happened, and she can confirm it happened, but she just doesn't remember doing that and staring at me. She doesn't remember that. Because, if I could explain it, I would explain, like, oh, maybe she was, like, sleepwalking. But she's just never dealt with sleepwalking. And I've never seen that happen in any other moment. And neither has my dad. So it's really weird.